It all started now. This day's a turning point in my life. The day I begin living my life from the inside out. And I am transformed. I am transformed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria Mirkovich, and I'm your host for Family Today. This show is for parents, grandparents, and young adults. How many of you would like to have a more manageable life? And how many of you would like to have more resilience in your life, in your family life? Today, I have a guest. Her name is Klara, and she is an expert of a winning mind. She's a coach and speaker. And I also am connected also with Mr. Theo Titton, who's a life coach also, and he's my co-host. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Maria. I just appreciate the introduction.
Thank you. So the first thing that I would like to ask you, Dr. Klara, is that how would you direct families today with this kind of time? I don't want to say anything negative because I think we're going to a better time. I'm always expecting a better time. But how would you advise people who have problems with their kids, for example, problems paying bills, problems with their spouse relationship, excuse me. So
well, there are different, oh, okay, go ahead.
So, okay, go ahead, Dr. Klara. I'm done with my question.
Okay, so, well, because there's a variety of layers that you have asked in that question. So problem with the kids, problem with pay the bills, it is a lot of different things.
Yes.
Now, the number one way that I noticed that for all of us to be able to deal with these situations is what really created the biggest problem. One, obviously, losing our jobs and losing the paycheck and so forth and so on. But even that, I think the deepest issue has been around the fact that people were in closed quarters and close proximity, and whatever we were able to deal with on, like, okay, I go to work, you go to work, child goes to school, and then we have a couple of hours to ourselves, all those things just absolutely exponentially grew and exploded in the households, or were going to be exploding and had to be held down and had to be bottled up. And I think the bigger issue that we face, and this is, again, it's my personal opinion, that I've been talking to a lot of different people, and I started a couple of groups and so forth. What I felt is that the biggest issue was not what we are faced with in losing our jobs and all those other parts, but the biggest issue was to be able to find that common ground where, for the first time, maybe many of the families, and especially partners and husband and wife, and either traditional relationships or not, they found each other in a much more closer environment where all these issues that we could deal with, it just really grew into a much bigger problem, if you will.
Can you just explain to the audiences what resilience means? Because some people might not know, like my mom.
Okay, so resilience, there's again two different things here, because the resilience is more of the weathering of what comes at you. How not everybody is going to be going through all these different events. That's the huge equalizer that we have in this particular situation. That doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter what race or gender you are. This hit everyone. So this is a huge equalizer. So this is what really brought us that who is the one that can actually weather this storm the best? And that's what resilience is.
Explain that. How would you explain that? Who could weather the storm?
So that is weathering the storm. That is the resilience. And the way I explain it is that it's not what we are hit with, but how we see the opportunity in what we are hit with. And
Yeah.
that's what I feel is really divides people, because some people, when they are hit with the same thing, the ones that are not resilient enough to see the opportunity and start growing from that as soon as it's possible, maybe even days, they are not going to be able to rebuild the life that they supposed to be rebuilding. Those are the people that suddenly I said, okay, we are hit. They stay in the moment, and that's also resilience, is being able to judge the situation in the moment. Instead of looking into the future, what is it going to do to me? How is it going to affect me? The regrets of, oh gosh, I wish I would have put more money aside. And instead of buying that $30,000 car, I could have bought a $10,000. So these are
Yeah.
the things. What resilience is, to be able to stay in the moment of crisis,
Mhm.
and see the opportunity and the potential of growth in it, as opposed to becoming, if you will, a victim to the situation.
Exactly. Theo, do you have a question for Dr. Klara?
This is it's fantastic, because it kind of breaks the quote unquote standard dictionary version of resilience, which is to just simply maintain the ability to maintain status quo. But what I'm hearing you say, Dr. Klara, is the ability to like evaluate, the ability to adapt and transform like very, very quickly, so that you are able to maybe even do something completely different, but also it's stable. It is keeping that resilient stableness of in your life, so that you're basically adapt to change. And that's what we've been doing great as a species, right? As a species, that's why we're the predominant species on the planet, is because of the resilience of our species.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you. What would you say to people that you're a life coach, to people that went through traumatic things, and how they were either sinking or swimming? That's an
I mean, it's almost nearly the same message. It's really looking at the opportunity. Whenever there's, I say is that transformation almost always happens through crisis. Crisis can either happen by default because it's happening at you or to you, or the transformation can happen as a crisis because you invent it as a crisis. Like this is a crisis. I'm going to make the opportunity happen now.
Yes.
And so that's how I would coach somebody through this as well.
Yes. Thank you. So, Dr. Klara, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. So the traumatic experiences, see, in anything that happens to us, I believe the number one thing is to judge whether we are aware of this happening to us or we are not aware. Then
Absolutely.
the second layer will be is when we become aware that something had happened to us, then we coming to a decision point. And a decision point is, am I wanting to do something about this, or am I going to stay in it? Now, that staying in it is not as simple, obviously, because some of us don't have the coping mechanisms to come out of that, any kind of traumatic situation and whatever it caused for us.
Coping mechanism be, just for out there so people could understand? The
coping mechanism. There's two types of, again, once if we, so let me finish that. Once we become aware that there's a problem, so let's say we become aware, so we are that group of people. We became aware that that was a problem, that was a trauma in our life, and it's affecting us. Again, we can go to two ways in there. We can develop a coping mechanism which will help us daily live our life without this trauma affecting us too deeply. Like we can function. We would have any of the energy therapy techniques. We could have any of the cognitive behavior psychology techniques.
Energy, because a lot of people do lose energy while they go through some traumatic or problematic event. So I think energy is key. That will be a number one to build up when you go through something maybe as deep as trauma. Go ahead, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So the other point is that the energy itself is, we don't, I understand your point of losing it, but we don't really lose energy. What we do is we repress it. So what happens is that when we don't free ourselves from the effects of the trauma, what happens is that it almost, imagine like there's like this cup, and I'm sure that even your audience have seen and heard about the fact that, you know, we always start out like an empty cup, but when we are born, but there's like this layer that's just the fluid is just whatever fluid it may be, it just keeps going in it, and eventually it starts to overflow. Now when it starts to overflow, if we don't pour it out completely, then what it does, the weight of that fluid represses that it just creates such a weight in that cup. That's why a cup is heavy, and that's why we are heavy, is because we don't free up the energy that was repressed. Then we're gonna get heavier and heavier and heavier, and that's where we really lose the energy. We don't really lose it, but we definitely repress it.
So how would you win your energy back? How would you bring your energy back?
The best way of doing it is
Let me give you an example. I know people, when they went through trauma, like divorce, for example, or they went bankrupt, some people, they lost all their energy. They couldn't even walk. Now their energy needs to be pumped up with something. So how would you say, you know, to start up these persons who go through this, how would they go and gaining their energy back?
Again,
points.
It's a great question, and here is why it's a great question, because the answer lies in the question. And what I mean by that is that if you, again, you have to become aware that you're tired because you had either an emotional trauma, physical trauma, or you tried of its effects. But the second thing is, it's not that we want to clear ourselves from that trauma or if it's effects, but we have to gain courage to look at that trauma. And that's usually the hardest thing, is even if people say, I am willing to look at my stuff, it still has to have courage. A person has to have courage, because the hardest thing to do is, if let's say I look at my trauma, and the trauma has something to do, for example, with my spouse. Maybe I am in an abusive relationship. Maybe I am in an emotionally abusive relationship. If I start looking at this, am I going to lose my husband? Am I going to lose my family? Am I going to lose what I worked so hard for? So the courage, I believe, is the number one asset that we have to build up. And the way to build that one up is to show what's possible. And that's why community, that's why, for example, I built my Rock Your Resilience and Rebuild Facebook community, because in that community, we can provide that group courage for people to overcome whatever is affecting them right now. And we need that, every single person.
Can you share some of the things that you went through and you came out of it as a winner, just so to speak?
Oh, well, so.
That was hard. If you would like to share.
Great question.
Yeah, so. Theo, I'm sorry. I cut you off, Theo. Sorry.
I was saying that's a really great question that Maria.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so let's talk about one which is incredible and it affects all of us. Perfectionism. Okay. I think, especially, I'm sure your audience that's watching this, they want to grow, they want to improve their lives. So they probably are some form of high achievers. It doesn't matter in what aspect of life. One of the stamp of a high achiever is perfectionism in some aspect. Yes, exactly. So point is that for me, that developed in childhood from one memory when I saw my father making a joke about my sister without her skating performance, without him ever even seeing how beautifully this girl skated. And we were coming home from the skating rink, and my father made this joke, and I froze. And I am 5.5 years younger than my sister, and I froze. And that energetic frozen capsule, that memory, that if that what I've seen, I still get the chills, and I've gotten through it. So I can talk about this without crying now, right? When we experience that, when a person who I just saw perfection, and I know sports, even back then when I was young, I was a crazy, like I knew sports and I knew I saw something perfect and beautiful. If that's not good enough, what the hell do I have to do in my life to be good enough? And kaboom, the anchor was in there, and I never stopped pleasing people. I never stopped trying to be perfect for everyone. And that broke down my Ridgewood Country Club Championship. That's the one that I realized, 11 years ago, that I have a problem, is because I was just choking and choking and choking every time I had to deliver my most. I just could not deliver. So that's when I really started searching for answers, and I went to regular psychologists. I did all those different things that everybody does, but there were no answers, and that's why I built my answer.
How did you build?
Wow, that's great.
Yes, Theo, go ahead.
No, that's really great, and this is such an awesome particular topic. I don't know if you can see in the background 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like, okay, like the wall of perfection, right? And,
oh, I see. You're absolutely right. And you should see me now. None of that.
American inventors, 4 master's degrees, bachelor science. It's crazy. Like,
it's in perfect order too. I can see that.
Right.
Yeah.
But here, the funny thing is, it started from an event. I failed 2nd grade.
Okay, there you go. I almost didn't make it out too good.
And I was like, oh my God, that's not going to happen ever again and ever. And then boom, like perfectionism kicked in. How do I make sure that never happens? Strangely enough, it happened again my first quarter of freshman year in college. I had a 1.9.
That's good.
And you're going to be kicked out of school if you don't. It was almost like reliving that same scenario all over again. And from that moment forward, I was like, 4.0 until graduation. So there was like this perfection. So I get it. Now, where is we can see all the upside of that, right, Klara?
Yeah,
there's a lot of upside. There's a lot of winning to that side. I want you to dive in a little bit to like, well, there are also side effects to it. Like there is another side to the perfection that could swing into like let's call it the negative spectrum. And could you share some of that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can give you a variety of responses. Let me give you just one, for example, and this person actually told me that I can tell her story. So this person actually wrote the book about how to overcome perfection, and still had a difficulty with going live on Facebook because it's not editable. And it's editable, but not really, you would have to download, and that's not alive. And saying so in reality. So we had to go in, and I said, okay, so we had to go in to figure out what was the event that back in the time have created that need for perfectionism. And the reason why that's important, it's not because then we can cast blame on someone, is that because we create some form of conclusion, we just draw a conclusion about ourselves, about our environment, about that situation. So in order for us to avoid the negative sides, which is plenty, which one of them is that later on in life, and now this person is close to 50, later on in life, if you want to change something over, you want to start something new, when you are not when you become a novice again at something, so like starting your online business, you become a novice again at it, then this perfectionism is going to anchor you down and will not let you go. It will not let, I mean, it's maybe in, Facebook Live, it's maybe in some other things, it's not gonna let you go. So the positive part is it's definitely bring you fantastic results. But the negative part is that every time you're trying to do something, it's gonna hold you back, gonna hold you back, gonna hold you back. And a lot of times it can turn into depression, it can turn into, it's just plain anxiety, then depression, performance anxiety. It just have a lot of negative side to it.
Yeah, like, why is this not working? I'm doing all this work. Why is it working? Why don't I have customers yet?
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Totally. I gotta listen.
But that, yeah, absolutely. And that's the customer part is, if the other negative, which I think maybe if we're talking about customers, is that if you don't clear out these elements and these things that hold you down, you will never be able to show your true authentic self. And it took me several years to get to this point, several years of cleansing of like, okay, wait, this is still not me. This is still not me. This is still not me. And then I realized, and that's what I put into my winning my blueprint, that I take people through literally steps at specific stages, so we can actually find, clear, and rebuild the true you. Because until you are, especially in today's world, you can't sell anything to anyone unless it's coming through an authentic self.
Amen.
It's not gonna happen anymore.
This is coming back to my thank you for letting me realize what a warrior I am. And I did the warrior training hands-on. It was, if I knew that I signed up for something like that, I would have never went. I went, so many exercises that I proved to myself that I could do it. And what brings me back again to go to television, I just started barely speaking English, and this Italian director asked me to translate the Italian news to English, and so I did. But I didn't have any schooling of that. My friends were always saying, "Oh my God, Maria, you have so much courage." It's not that I had so much courage; I just willed myself to do it. The next thing, I was trembling. I always did that, but I did the right thing. And for survival too, I think that we need to be resilient for our survivals. I really believe in that you have to, a lot of people might not have the courage and they need some mentoring or tutoring or whatever, but you have to get real and do the next right thing. In warrior camp, we were just like the Green Berets. I said, I'm not cut up for this. And you know what? They told me, yes, you are. You attracted this, and you can leave the group. So I go, oh my God, okay, I'll do it. And everything in my life was so hard, Klara, that even my birth, everything in Croatia, then Yugoslavia, then coming to Italy, and then relearn the language, being fearful of, not speaking the Italian language well. But everything served me. Everything made me grow as a person strongly. I went through so many traumas in my life. I overcame them. And not because I had so many people around me. I believe sometimes when you go through a lot of traumas and problems and things like that, a lot of people just abandon you.
Yes.
There's one thing that I noticed in my lesson, abandonment. There was so many things, and I had to cope with it And even therapists or coaches couldn't understand sometimes, or they were narcissistic. So I had to learn in my own ways, by prayer, meditation, by doing the next right thing, and just say, I'm not gonna sink, I'm gonna swim. And I did that. And this brings me to remember, this is not scripted or anything, so I just thought of it. My little doggy poodle died at 9 months. And I was grieving like I didn't grieve for anybody, any human being. And then I bought another little dog. He's a Bichon poodle, and he was only 6 months old when his name is Prince. When we threw him in the waters in the pool, and I didn't know that all the dogs did not know how to swim. I thought every dog knew how to swim. I didn't know. So we threw him in the pool. We were all there to catch him, all my family, and he started swimming. He was scared, and I never forget his face. He was so scared, but he went to swim. He swam. He was a warrior. He was a winner. So that's winning the mind, I believe. Would you add something to that, please? Thank you.
Well, two things. Number one is, one of the best things, we were just talking about being unique.
Thank you.
One of the best things that what we were talking about being unique, what makes you different and special in this online world is exactly what you thought was going to hold you back. And that is your accent. It is just one of those things that for the longest time was like, oh, you want to get rid of your accent, that, I'm Hungarian too, so therefore I have an accent, European, all the stuff. And I said, no.
They used to hire me for that. I used to get jobs
exactly
that students didn't. It was some kind of energy that they felt. And they told me that. I got paid more than other people who completed their college degrees. So I always thank God for that, because I really did my best. When you do your best, and not, you were talking about perfectionism, in this warrior camp, you have to do it no matter what. Perfection or not, you have to do it. Otherwise, you're always going to be making excuses. I don't have this, I don't have that. Today, I could see myself that the choice that I made with this director, Italian director, and I thought about it, and I was scared. And the first time on camera, I go, oh my God, right, television, no. But then I did it. I was trembling, in my legs were trembling, but I did it anyway. And that's what I think creates a winner opposed to sinking, swimming opposed to sinking. A lot of people nowadays, I think that even with a lot of people, I'm not gonna name anything or any ethnicity or anything, but there are too many excuses. Too many excuses. It's not gonna win you anything. My husband, God bless him, he works 24/7, and he likes to work. He really does. It makes him live longer. He works very hard. I work very hard. I always did very hard. And so many times I gave my lessons as a life coach service work. You know how many things, singing in the choir, I did service. Other people were paid, I wasn't. It was okay. It was my choice to do it. Service, I think, is the number one thing to do, and then it gets you to a better place. This is one of my things too, that you could do your service work too. To some people that can't afford it, so many times I life coach a lot of people that I knew they could not afford it. And instead of bitching about it, I picked up the phone and called them. And I coached them to their problems. And I helped them. And that made me feel well. And that made me feel that I gave something to somebody. I think it's a lot about service work too, Dr. Klara. What would you say to that? And then we have to end. Ultimately.
Okay, well, yes, of course. So service is, okay, so there has to be a balance, because if you do too much, and one of my biggest issues with some of the coaches that come to me for coaching, that
Mhm.
cannot ask or cannot establish their financial value.
Mhm.
The problem with the services that we have to have the
But
balance.
excuse me,
But
I'm not saying service as your clients.
no,
As
I understand that. I'm just saying that what we
service,
need to do
service
is we need to.
just like
As,
when you go and give soup kitchens, you
no,
don't get
I get it. It's
I
just what I'm trying to say is that
did a
you
lot of
have
that.
to strike a balance, because what happens is that a lot of the people that end up doing a lot of the service,
Mhm.
they love that response that they get from the people they serving for free, but you're not going to necessarily get the same response from the people that you are serving for money. And so what you may want to make sure is that you see the value of getting paid for your services as well, and you still the
Absolutely.
value of getting paid in
I'm not negating that at all.
acknowledgments
I'm not
and
negating
love
that,
and all that stuff.
but I think once in a while to do the service work
Oh
is
no. I sing in the choir. I do all that stuff. That's not the point. The point is just to make sure that we understand that we have to have a balance, because a lot of the
sure.
empaths and a lot of the life coaches have a difficult time
Yeah.
charging for their services. So that's why I want to make sure that there is that understanding, because I went
Discern
through that.
really needs you. You discern that if a person really needs you and they really cannot get
No, absolutely.
they
That's
look
that's
out
part
as
of the
a
process. Yeah.
being, human to human service. I really believe in that. And what you just said is ultimate truth. Beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you just have to do both, just for, because also you don't have energy if you
Work all
don't
the time. I
get
didn't say,
paid for energetically, like then you.
yes, I didn't say that. I said service is essential too. I'm not
Yes,
saying you get
absolutely.
paid for your hard work and money that you put and built in your business. I'm not saying that, but sometimes service work does help. It helps you realize things that you never realized before. But thank you for your comments and for being here, family today. Thank you. And Theo, would you like to say something?
Oh, it's really great that this has been a
Thank
great discussion, and
Yeah.
I think there's still lots of
Yes.
juicy material that we could talk to Klara about. So we may even want to have her back, you know, like
Yeah. Dr. Klara is so
and
awesome.
go on a different topic. You know, the resilience has been a great topic, but I think we could dive into that mind of hers. And
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. If we send this to Spectrum, if it comes 28 minutes, right, Gina? I think we're over it. We could edit maybe something. And then, yes, and then we could have another segment with Dr. Klara. Dr. Klara, I would like to thank you. And Theo,
Thank you
too,
so much.
very much.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that. And we have not even scratched the surface. So
and before we go, the whole perfection thing, because I have that with a lot of clients too.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, I think you pointed to this, Klara, was you know, it causes sometimes stuckedness. Perfection can cause stuckedness. So, and so I always say imperfect action beats perfect inaction.
You always
yes.
say that. I like that. Thank you so much, Theo. Okay,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.
Thank you, Dr. Klara.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Everybody. Thanks.
It all started now. This day's a turning point in my life. The day I begin living my life from the inside out. And I am transformed. I am transformed.